Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Reshape Hospitality with Tech, presented by Advanced Hospitality Technologies. I am Maria and I'm joined by my colleague Kazim. The guest on this podcast episode is Susan Berry. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, before moving forward to our discussion, I want that you introduce yourself to our audience, like about your professional journey, your challenges you have faced so far in your career life.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, I started my hospitality career like so many people as a server when I was in school. It was a great way to make money and it was a super fun job. And because I had to make a decision about my major very quickly when I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So, when I graduated, I was offered a job running an off premise catering company for the restaurant group where I was a server. And because I had no idea what else to do, I said yes. I thought I was making so much money at the time. You guys, I probably made like 12 cents an hour. It was ridiculous. I worked so hard. But I learned a huge amount and really got involved in everything in events from sales to operations. I would sleep in my car in between events and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, when my now husband and I decided we were going to leave that city and move across country to Denver, I was like, well, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, might as well keep doing this catering thing. And I got hired at a hotel as a director of catering. And that was sort of the beginning of my professional career in the hotel business. After that, I was a property director of sales and marketing for 10 years. So, several different hotels in Denver, Colorado, Washington, D.C., and here in Atlanta, Georgia. And most of what I did, I worked for Starwood at the time. This was long before the Marriott acquisition of that company. And a lot of what I did was open new build hotels, which in those days for Starwood meant that I was the first employee that got hired. And the reason that's important is that I got to be the director of human resources, the director of finance, the general manager, the director of housekeeping. So I was constantly learning and constantly in this really exciting adrenaline rush environment. And then when the hotels got open, you're like, wait a minute, this is boring. This is easy. So after I opened two hotels, I opened a Westin right outside of Washington, D.C., and then a W here in downtown Atlanta. I left to start my company. That was in the spring of 2009. And so I've been in business with Hive Marketing for 14 years. And what we do is business to business commercial strategy for the hospitality industry. So, what that means in plainer words is that we help hotel owners, third party management companies, brands, and vendors market, sell, and price to each other. That was a long story. I hope y'all are still awake.
Yes, you are hosting a super podcast, Top Floor. Can you tell us what's the idea behind this podcast was? We would love to know more about that.
Sure, I'm happy to. I sort of had three goals with the show with Top Floor. The first
Mm-hmm.
is that, as you are going to know by the end of this conversation, but you may have already noticed, I am very motivated by learning new things because I am an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly curious person. And so, having a show where I get to ask anyone in the industry to come and let me ask them questions is the ultimate way to satisfy my curiosity. So that's one of the goals. The second is that when I started my hospitality career, it was a little bit by accident, but then I followed the path that I could see in front of me. So I knew that I could go from a director of catering to a sales manager to a director of sales and
Mm-hmm.
marketing. And then, I could have gone on to be a general manager, vice president, whatever the case may be. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
a clear ladder. What I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know was all of
Mhm.
the different career paths and jobs that exist in hospitality that are outside of the operation. So everything from real estate, asset management, hospitality podcast host, like social media, all of those things I had no idea existed. I mean, some of them didn't exist when I started my career. So, the second goal of Top Floor is to really show people what the huge variety of different types of careers hospitality can bring you. That, when you start your first day as a valet parker or a front office, checking people in, that that's not the end. There are all kinds of different paths and all different ways to go. And then the last sort of goal of the show is to really shine a light on and elevate really great new ideas that can move our industry forward. That I get really excited about, pushing for innovation and pushing forward into the future. And so our show is about the future of hospitality as a result.
Susan, so basically, what I'm interested in is because you have such a diverse experience in the hospitality industry. I'd like to ask, hospitality industry is turned to be rather slow when it comes to adoption of new technologies, from being slow to downright reluctant. So, do you think that hospitality does not want to adopt technology, and how that has that changed in the last couple of years?
So, just to make sure I heard the question, because I was giggling when you said part of it, you're asking, is the industry reticent to adopt new technology and why that is?
Yes, definitely. If you
Okay.
think it is true.
I do think it's true. I think that are some really practical and good reasons for that. And I think there are some really silly and nonsensical reasons for that. So, the practical reasons are the business model of the industry. And what I mean by that is the way that most hotels operate, there are three separate, very important stakeholders, and all of those people's interests are at cross purposes. So you have the owner of the hotel, the person who owns the real estate. Most of the time, you have a third party management company because the owner doesn't want to run the hotel. She wants and needs to hire somebody else to do that for her. And then you have the brand, whatever the flag is that flies on the hotel. Most people, and I learned this so clearly in the pandemic, most people don't realize that hotels are usually owned and sometimes operated by individuals rather than by Marriott or Hilton or Choice or whatever the case may be. So when you've got those three different stakeholders, everybody I think probably wants new technology, but nobody wants to pay for it. And so if you can't pass the expense on to the guest by saying, "Hey, look, we got a renovation. Our hotel is nicer, so now we can charge higher rates." Nobody cares if you get a new PMS system or whatever it is, right? So you can't say to the guest, yeah, I know our rates have gone up a little bit, but it's because we got a new piece of technology. So it's really hard to figure out who should pay for that. And I think that is the practical reason behind the lack of technology adoption. I think that sort of the less practical or the part that makes less sense to me is that there is some reticence, in my opinion, based on the fact that people have rolled out premise based systems for a really long time and it has been a nightmare for them. And so every time they hear of a new system, they're like, hey, we did this 20 years ago and it sucked. We are not going through that hell again. Do you know what I mean? And they're not realizing that technology has evolved past the old school, big server room in a closet, and that they can do things much more quickly, easily, and less painfully.
But this brings to me my next question. Don't you think that guest expectations are also changing technology wise? Because I just don't think that giving suitable amenities or a mini bar is going to cut it when it comes to guest expectation. because guests do expect to stay at a hotel where they can use all of their devices without the internet service being choked up, or they can actually log into their own Netflix or whatever streaming services they prefer. So don't you think that guests would rather go for a property which offers faster internet or technology wise some add-on which rather than the old school concept of good service?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's now become the price of admission versus a nice to have. I think the things that are a nice to have are the tech stack, like a cloud based reservation system versus a premise based, or a seamless channel manager, those kind of things. But when it comes to Wi-Fi and being able to do your everyday stuff that you do, it, hotels who aren't providing that might as well shut their door. What is the even point? Come on.
Another thing that I really wanted to ask to you about, because it is something that I really want to know, is about artificial intelligence. Because a couple of weeks ago you did your podcast about DAL-E and ChatGPT. Now
hmm
hotel has been fondling with some AI-based chatbot or digital concierge in the past, but ChatGPT are natural language-based artificial intelligence. Do you see these kind of products having any impact in hospitality industry now or in the future?
I definitely think so. I am not an expert on this topic. And so, anyone who's listening and I say something dumb, just be cool and be kind because I may not know what the heck I'm talking about. I feel like there are probably tremendous opportunities for the activities that right now people in hotels are doing based on their gut. And I don't want to discount gut feeling because, a lot of times they're like, people are like, it's either data or it's intuition. It can't be both. I don't agree with that. I think people's intuition, people's gut feeling is their brain's ability to synthesize data at a speed that they don't themselves understand. And so when I say I have a gut feeling that this piece of business isn't going to work for this hotel, that doesn't mean that I'm just like out there, smelling the roses and hoping for the best. It means all of the years of experience I have, all of the data that I've observed are synthesizing in that moment for a gut feeling. So I just feel like I have to make that disclaimer. Um, but in order to be competitive moving forward and to solve another major issue, which is labor, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit, the industry is going to have to figure out a way to replace some of its highest wage earners with automation. And I think it's very possible. For example, pricing. I think that hotels can price themselves 99% automatically or using AI without needing human intervention, with the exception of some special events and, some things that they they may know that they can't teach an AI. Same thing, and oh man, are my sales compadres gonna want to kill me when they hear me say this. Analyzing and booking 80% of group business is a math problem. It's a, do we have the dates? Do we have the rates? Do we have the space? What fits where? What alternatives can we offer? And humans are really good at that. And for a long time, people were better at that than the machine, even though we had tools to help us. I think now that's starting to flip. And I think, these scores of salespeople in hotels who are receiving incoming leads and then producing bids for them are easily replaced by an AI. Again, be cool if I'm saying the words wrong because I don't know for sure. And then I think another one that we're already starting to see is a technology intervention that allows line staff and shift workers to make their own schedules. So if you know, teach your scheduling robot robot? I don't know. The rules that everyone has to work one evening shift, everyone has to work one weekend shift, or whatever your rules are, and then let people pick their own schedules. All of a sudden, all of the angst and frustration about scheduling goes away, and people don't have to fool with it because they're doing it themselves. I don't know. Do you guys think those make sense in terms of your question? I
I'm
can't stop
totally.
being a podcast host. I'm going to interview you. Tell me what
I
you
mean,
think.
because one of the most hotly debated topic at the moment is, especially, are artists going to get redundant with the advent of AI, because they are producing same masterpieces. But I personally believe, I belong to the club who think that they will maybe complement them and augment them, but they can never replace them. So I think we should accept that and move on, rather than being and antagonizing them seamlessly, because they are not going to replace people. They're not going to replace jobs. They're going to help other people.
I think they'll probably replace some jobs, but I do take your point and agree with you. The thing to always keep in mind about artificial intelligence is that it is based on everything that's come before. It is not coming up with new ideas to move ahead, right? And that's where people come in. That's where human intervention is most needed. And so, uh, Dolly too can make a piece of art in the style of an artist who has lived before, but Dolly too cannot create a piece of art in a style that we've never seen before. Only an artist can do that.
Exactly, that's what I think. Which brings to me another question. It is specifically targeted towards small independent hotels. You are an expert in marketing, but in our digital space of today, where every hotel is somewhat offering similar amenities in a similar price point, how do small independent hotels, what they can do to stand out, to be on the spectrum of any guest that is searching for the hotel, how they can compete with big brands in the digital marketplace?
Mhm. I'm going to tell you a theory that I have. It's not proven yet, but this is my theory of how to do that. That rather than trying to attract every traveler who comes to the location where your independent hotel exists, instead pick three. Pick three kinds of travelers and only talk to them. And make a page on your website about them, make your content about them, do advertising to them, pick three, and that way you're carving out your little niche in the entire bucket of travelers, because small independent hotels are never going to be able to spend the same amount of money that a branded property can to appeal to a huge wide, you know, variety of traveler. And so niche it down and just pick certain ones that you want to go after and go after them. I mean, and that can be something like people who are having ankle surgery. Do you know what like, it doesn't have to be this big glamorous thing or like this very obvious. It can be people. We have 6 hospitals around us. People come to town to go to the hospital. We're going to focus on people who are having ankle surgery, because that way we can speak their language, we can use imagery that would resonate with them. I mean, maybe that's a dumb example, but you know what I'm saying, that you just pick something and go after that. And then if it doesn't work, pick something else and go after that.
Uh, yeah, I think it's an interesting point of view. It definitely helps small independent hotels. Another thing I would like your opinion on is that ongoing debate that the future of hospitality industry is those smart rooms, because as homes across America are utilizing more and more smart devices, people will be expecting to have smart devices in their hotel rooms as well. For example, they will check in the hotel and they will expect an Alexa or something like that in their hotel room, so they can use to control lights and access their entertainment system. Do you think it is going a bit far? Just don't won't expect this much of technology in a hotel room in the future, or is it going to happen?
I don't know. I think there's probably room for both things. I think there's room for a really smart hotel room, and I think there's room for lack of a better term, very dumb hotel room. And I'll tell you why. Think about all of the things that got invented by hotels. I'll give you some examples. Telephones in every guest room, that was a Statler innovation. Room service was a Statler innovation. These crazy things called servidors, which were, and there's a hotel in Boston, I think, that still has them. So the guest room door had a door within the door, and you would hang up your dirty clothes, and then someone would come in the hallway and open the door within the door, take the dirty clothes out, and go take them to launder them without having to bother you and disturb you. Now, those were cool, exciting innovations. Some of them are now universal. Some of them, like the Servidor, we have never heard of, right? So, some smart things, an Alexa or uh, I don't know, a Nest thermostat or whatever, that kind of stuff may become standard. But there is also something about travel and about the appeal of hotels that they are nothing like home. And sometimes you want to stay somewhere that's nothing like home. Like, so many hotels are like, oh, I'm your home away from home. No, thank you. I want to stay somewhere that is nothing like home because I want a new experience. I want some new inputs into my brain so I can think differently. And from that perspective, not having the chatter of Alexa or not having, 4 million programs to choose from on Netflix may be another way that the future goes.
So old school, nostalgic, feel is always going to be there.
I think so. Or just, what it, something that we have to talk about, I think, are people's purpose of visit. And the purpose for trip A is never the same as trip B and never the same as trip C. So if I'm taking a trip because I have business to get done and I want the least amount of disruption in my lifestyle as possible, then I want a smart device. I want to be able to stay up to date on my show. I want whatever I want, Peloton, blah, blah, blah. But if I am like on the verge of a nervous breakdown and just want to get away and escape, that's a whole different purpose of visit. And there need to be hotels that serve that purpose as well.
I mean, I think that's an interesting point of view. So my,
Interesting.
my
Is that your code for you're a weirdo, Susan?
of course not, because we need different kind of people. Because similar, same cut of hospitality leaders are not going to cut it. We need different ideas. We need exchange of ideas as well. For example,
Yes.
that's the purpose of this podcast as well.
I think I missed the last thing.
I was saying that we need exchange of ideas. We need different people to come together. So that new innovation, that's how it comes to light, rather than following one particular thing over and over again and expecting to something different to happen.
Absolutely. Plus, it's just boring. Like, nobody wants to work in that environment where it's the same over and over and over again. At least I don't.
Susan, if I'm going to ask this, adopting new technology by hoteliers, do you think it would be help them to increase their hotel performance in terms of services and revenue? What's your input on this?
I don't think we can have a blanket statement about that because I don't think every new technology is a fit for every hotel. So, if it makes sense for the property, then perhaps that can happen. Um, a technology like Beachy, which is something that I featured on Top Floor, doesn't make sense at a hotel in
Mm-hmm.
the mountains, right? Because it's for
Mm-hmm.
beachside performance. So I don't think we can make a blanket statement, but I do think there is tremendous value in evaluating technological advances as often as you possibly can in order to increase revenue in your hotel.
Oh, completely agreed with your statement. Events and conferences are a great way to, grow your businesses and professional networks, right? What's your opinion about such events? Have you visited hospitality events and which one?
I have. I've been to a ton of different hospitality conferences. I really like to go to hotel investment conferences, and
Mm-hmm.
I attend High Tech, which takes place in the summertime every year. It's a technology conference.
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
the most recent conference I went to, I actually helped plan, which was for Cayuga Hospitality Consultants. I'm a partner in that organization, and we bring together consultants who are independent and offer services to the hospitality industry like I do. Um, and we had a fantastic conference here in November, and it was huge in terms of getting to meet and talk to all of those people face to face. Many of us had never met in person before, so it was really really meaningful, and it really reinforced to me the importance of that face to face networking for sure.
I mean, how was your experience while participating in such events?
My experience was fantastic. I definitely value and enjoy being face to face with my colleagues.
Do you have any advice for a young professional interested in starting their career in the hospitality industry?
I do. And this goes back to something I was talking about earlier with my show, which is sort of making sure that people know about all of the different career paths in hospitality, not just sort of hotel operations. So, my advice would be to not limit yourself to operations, but also to
Mm-hmm.
not miss out on doing operations. So there are a lot of people that go straight from a hospitality degree in college to becoming a financial analyst or becoming an asset manager, whatever the case may be in hospitality. And I think there is so much value, even if you do it for a year or a summer or a season, in
Mm-hmm.
working in hotels and getting your hands dirty and understanding how the operation of a hotel works.
I mean, your advice will definitely help to our young professionals in the futures and workplace too. So then you spent your weekend at home or go for an outing with your family and friends?
I do some of both. So people always make fun of me because I really love working. So I work as much as
Mm-hmm.
I possibly can because it's fun. I love what I do. But if I'm not working, then
Mm-hmm.
I will be reading or shopping. I'm a big
Oh,
shopper, especially like antique stores, yard sales, estate sales, thrift stores, all that kind of stuff. That's so fun to me to like go on a treasure hunt. So that's what I like to do.
which book do you like to read, in your spare time?
So lately, I've been reading a bunch of detective books. I read really fast, so I like to read a series
Mm-hmm.
versus an individual book because otherwise, if I finish it, then I'm like, what do I do next, right? So I want to
Uh-huh.
read a series of like 20 books in a row. So I just finished the V.I. Warshawski detective series. This is the woman detective in Chicago.
I do love a good series, but I prefer fantasy.
Oh, really? What have you?
Just
What's the most
the,
recent
the
one?
time, Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Interesting, interesting. I
But most people don't tend to take fantasy seriously.
I mean, I like to read
Yeah.
pure silly books, like just not very serious at all, but I really want them to be more on the like detective, lawyer, investigator, like those kind of people fighting
John
crime.
some kind of stuff,
Yeah, exactly.
or maybe Dan as well.
Yeah.
Susan, as a professional, self-improvement is very necessary. What is one thing you want to change in yourself for this year?
You're not going to like my answer to this because I do not want to change or improve anything about myself. I want
That's nice.
to lean into being as real and authentic and as much like myself as I possibly can. And that means not changing anything, just not hiding anything.
Oh, wow, that's so nice, Susan. We all have some influencers that are connected to build career. Is there any hospitality professional that inspired you and helped you to achieve your goal in your career?
So many different people, too many to name, but I will talk about one person who
Mm-hmm.
helped me in kind of an unusual way. So, this is a man named Greg Robinson. He passed
Mm-hmm.
away 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years
Oh,
ago, early in COVID. He was my
wow.
boss when I opened the Westin Arlington Gateway outside of Washington, D.C. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned a ton of different things from him. He was very smart, but the main thing I learned from him
Mm-hmm.
is that he left me alone and let me do my work without trying to get all up in my business all the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
loved it so much that that's why I started my company, because I want freedom and autonomy and the ability to do things at my pace and the way that I think I should do them. And he really gave me an example of what that could look like.
That's so nice. Do you want to share any thought to the share your experience with industry experts?
Well, I feel like I've shared a lot of my experience so far in our conversation. I think that, the most important thing is to keep moving forward and keep pushing for new, better, and more innovative industry.
That is so impressive, Susan. Okay, guys, here we end the conversation with our amazing guest, Susan. It's been a pleasure, and once again, thank you for joining our podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It was nice to meet you.
Same here. Have a great weekend. Till then, take care. Goodbye.
Bye bye.